Hello, second graders. Mrs. Shannon here to talk to you more about our story from yesterday, Lola and Tiva, an unlikely friendship. Yesterday, you heard me read the story to you during our read aloud time. And today, we are going to talk about using our comprehension skill of identifying key details with this story. For this lesson, you will need your composition notebook and a pencil. So if you do not have those items, please get them now. All right, we are going to dive into this story, remind ourselves of our essential question for the week, which is, how do we care for animals? And we learned all about how Tiva cared for Lola, the rhino, in this story. First, let's review our comprehension skill. This week, we are talking about key details. You can find important details in the photos and text of a selection. So, second graders, when you are reading a narrative nonfiction story, which is about real, true events, you should look not only at the words for information, but you should also be looking at the pictures to give you more details as well. Let's look at the next page about how we will set up our composition notebook. This is a reminder about our graphic organizer that we will be using, identifying 3 details from the story Lola and Tiva. A question I ask myself when determining if a piece of information from the story is a key detail is, what was this page mostly about? And that usually leads me to a key detail when I think about, what was the author or narrator talking about on this page? What was the main idea of this page? And it usually leads me to a key detail. So thinking of this structure in mind with our 3 boxes, we are going to create on our page in our composition notebook a page with 3 boxes. Here's my example. So open your composition notebook to a fresh page. Label the top with our comprehension skill of the week, which is key details. Today's date, October 23rd, 2020. And the title of our story, Lola and Tiva. Next, you will make 3 boxes on your paper and title them Detail. Pause this video to complete this page before moving on. All right, second graders, now that you have organized your page to fill out, we are going to review the story. Now, I've already read it out loud to you. I will not take time to read the whole thing again. Instead, I'm going to go over the main ideas from each page to identify our key details. On this first page, the author or narrator introduces us to the Liwa Wildlife Conservancy, which is in Kenya, Africa. They give us a little information about who lives there and what animals are there. We learn that a girl named Tiva and her family live on the conservancy. We learn on the next page that everyone at Liwa knew that Tiva wanted a puppy, but she could not have one because puppies were not allowed. So instead, she befriended a young rhino named Lola. And the narrator tells us that this is their true story. So I'm going to stop and think that so far in this story, we have learned that Tiva, a young girl, has befriended a rhino. That's really unusual, but it sounds like that's what this story is going to be about. So we have found our first key detail of information from this story. I took a picture of my composition notebook with my first detail listed. It says, Tiva becomes friends with a baby rhino named Lola. That is a really important piece of information in order to understand this story. Go ahead and pause this video to write your sentence down in your composition notebook before moving on. All right, second graders, on this next page, we learned all about Lola and how she was born to a mother who was blind. Her mom could not see her. And there was a time when Lola became separated from her mother, and her mom could not find her. She could not see. So Lola walked away and had no one to feed her or protect her. Lola was in danger. What happened next? Since she needed food and protection, the rangers at Liwa found her and brought her to a safe place that was near Tiva's house. So Lola would be out of danger. Now, what are the key details from these past pages I've just read? We learned that Lola lost her mother, and so the rangers brought her to Liwa, and it was close to Tiva's house. So that's one important detail that we just learned. That's how Lola and Tiva met. That seems like a pretty important detail to me. So our second detail is Lola lost her mom, so rangers brought her back to Liwa. Remember, second graders, to start your sentences with capital letters and end in periods. So take your time to jot down your second detail for our story. All right. In this next picture, I see Tiva is feeding Lola a big bottle of milk, a giant bottle. Looks like almost a gallon. Wow. So remember, second graders, that you can find key details in the words by reading the text. But you can also find key details using the photographs. And that's what I'm going to do right now. I see that Tiva learned how to feed the rhino a bottle of milk. That's what this page was mostly about. Remember, that's the question I ask myself when I'm trying to find key details. What was this page mostly about? And it was all about how Tiva learned to feed and care for Lola. So you've guessed it, second graders, that was our third key detail. Our third key detail is Tiva learned to feed Lola milk when she was hungry. And I can see I've left out a word. Right here, there should be the word when in between milk and she. Tiva learned to feed Lola milk when she was hungry. A little typo there. All right, so take time to write down your final sentence for your third detail. And you may have noticed that we have filled in all three of our boxes already. Pretty quick, second graders. I am going to continue looking at the pages and reviewing the story and asking myself some questions to double check my comprehension. So I'd love for you to continue listening to this video so you can hear how we can use asking ourselves questions to help us understand the story. There is a final example of my key details, and I will post this final page down below this video also. On this page, we saw the first sentence said, Tiva loved Lola. Lola was a lot like a big puppy. And I see on the ask and answer question down below, it says, how was Lola like a big puppy? Because I know she's a rhino. Well, I can look at the pictures and read the words to answer that question. I see that it says she licked things, she smelled things, she begged at the dinner table, and sometimes she just wanted to nap and be pet between her ears. Well, I don't know about you, second graders, but that sounds a lot like a big puppy to me. So I can ask myself these questions and find the answers in the text to check my understanding. I used the picture on the page that you see now, a picture of Lola begging at the dinner table, kind of just like a dog would. And I listed all the other ways that she was like a big puppy that Lily listed on the page. She licked things, she smelled things, she begged for food at the table, and she liked when Tiva pet her between her ears. So I could answer that question and check my comprehension to make sure I understood what the narrator was telling me. I see Lola and Tiva learning how to take mud baths. They were playing, and remember the word was wallow. They were wallowing in the mud. You see Tiva putting Lola to sleep in the hay. And at the very end, we are asked another question. How have Lola and Tiva changed over the course of this story? Well, I see on this last page it says Lola is almost full grown. I think rhinoceroses are pretty big when they're full grown. They're not the size of a dog anymore. And it says she is too big to play with Tiva like she used to. And I see at the very end it says, after all, a little girl never forgets her first best friend. And wow, Tiva really did a lot to help Lola when she was little. She learned how to care for an animal. So I can answer the question, how have Lola and Tiva changed? By noticing that Lola is now too big to play with Tiva, and Lola can now take care of herself. She doesn't need Tiva to feed her a bottle of milk every day. And I also think that Tiva changed because she learned how to care for an animal. She was so young when she started taking care of Lola that she was learning how to care for an animal at the same time. So now I think she is a pro at it. So second graders, it's always so important to stop and think about the story when you are reading it, and to remember to check for understanding while you are reading. That helps you remember what the story is about and know what you are reading. All right, second graders, I hope you finished filling in your composition notebook. And if you did not get a chance to, or you want to double check, you can look at the picture below this video to check your work. See you later, second graders.